Hello everybody. In this video I'm going to show you how I paint skin tone and how to deal with the skin tone. So skin tone is basically as complex as you want it to be, or you can make it as simple as just simplify, stylize. It doesn't matter you want to go realistic or just kind of halfway in between. You see the variation of the shift of hue and the shift of the temperature of the face, right? If you look at the real person face, you see that some of them you see like some is kind of greener or more blue around the forehead and a little more blue around the chin and jaw, and in the mid section it will be warmer. So this is what we call cool and warm zone. It's a cool zone on top, warm zone in the middle. As you see, there's a lot of red involved, and cool zone again around the jawline. And it doesn't matter what skin color it is, you will have the cool and warm zone. If you look at around here, it's a little more green and it's a little more red here. I pushed the red a little bit because I want to exaggerate it a bit more, and warm. So that's it here, like a little more toward green, a little more orange and red, and cool zone again. So first you got to pick the base, and the base I usually have like a full base, which is one base on pink with the lighter complexion and darker complexion, based on kind of what do you call it, a beige color or eggshell color, light, dark. And when you go to tan, a little more dark red tan and the green tan. So these are somewhat the most common color that we find in the skin tone. And when you pick the skin tone for, let's just say, the lighter tone, usually on the lighter tone, when you try to pick dark, and if you go here, even if you move the saturation, the color will be somewhat off. And a lot of time around the surface of the face, only that section that turns will have that kind of shadow. Most of the time you're dealing with the surface that have very little changes on the plane, with the exception of maybe eye socket that's gonna get a little bit darker, or underneath the nose. But a lot of time all the plane are very subtle. So most of the subtle plane, how I deal with them is I usually pick the color, especially the lighter one, because the lighter one is going to be harder to pick the cleaner shadow. You are going to pick the color, going a little bit more saturated, a little toward the red, and then you're going to have slightly darker. You want some hue shift, or finding a darker color when the plane change a little bit, just kind of like around this area. And you want to go darker, saturation, hue. Then you have a little bit darker. This one might be a little bit too pink, so let's that's why you have to kind of test it out. So I'm gonna pick this one, maybe move saturate a bit, shift the hue just maybe 1 or 2, and now you got a little darker. You want to go lighter, you go desaturate, move it toward the blue. So in this tutorial we're assuming the cool light or the natural light, and try to use solid color and try to only blend around the edge. That way the blending doesn't go over everywhere and it will get really muddy. And for the darker tone, you can most of the time easily shift the brightness and shift the saturation, and you get slightly darker color. It's fine, mostly because it's the darker hue are more saturated. And I guess, well, let's just pick the color here. Now we're just gonna paint the face right off the bat, and the brush I'm using is the default, so I'm gonna go a little lighter, resizing my brush so I can get the shape of the face. Now I'm just gonna go pick the color of the hair. So I'm just painting on one layer, since this one is not going to be that complicated. Just gonna be simple portrait. Usually I just try to let the brush do the work. Usually the middle of your face will be a little more warm, and as you go toward the top, like your forehead and your chin, it will be cooler. Actually, the eye is like half the height of the face. So, and then the nose is halfway from the eyes to the bottom, usually. Now it's the lips. As for the lips, I'm gonna move it a little bit toward the red. And the lips about halfway to the chin. Usually it's closer to the nose. Basically, when I do the quick stroke, sometimes I just try to find out the color right and the value. And you notice I haven't yet changed my opacity, but it's important that you know exactly what value to put in there. Alright, now it's time to add some more detail. Make another layer, pick the hair color, go darker, more saturated. Now I'm going to add eyebrows. Usually eyebrows is pretty much the same color as the hair. And then on the lower part, you only have a little bit of eyelash on this side. This layer is basically, I try to keep it only for the darker value or eyes and eyebrows. Alright, now I'm gonna add a little shadow. Pick the side of the face. This bottom of the side of the cheek usually get darker. And if this, when I paint on, it looks kind of a little bit too dark, I'm just gonna pick the lightest part of that, redo. And then now I have the value that I want. And if you are new to like painting facial, now I'm using overlay and using skin color on my palette to kind of make it a little more vibrant, because it starts to get really sort of muddy. What I was gonna say, it's on overlay, so just gonna move everything along, and I use about probably 50% to 70%, and then I just turn the opacity down to 70% on overlay, because it kind of gets slightly muddy. What I was mentioning, and then I cut the hair out, and I used level on top of the face to make a little more contrast right there, and then I merge it down, so now the face is a little bit lighter. So if you are still new to kind of painting face or something, look for a really good reference, and then try to go off of a reference. Use just the lighting. You don't have to make the face look exactly the same. It doesn't have to have the likeness. You just practicing the how to kind of paint a face and get to know where the lights and shadow are. Alright guys, well, thank you very much for your support.